It's Wednesday night. That means it's time for a weekly, I couldn't get the word out, Auburn Family Night, where you call in. It's all about what you want to talk about, your comments, your questions, and your calls right here. Let's get this thing started. War Eagle Auburn family, War Eagle E2C Network family, thank you so much for joining us. Whether you are watching live, whether you're watching on the replay, whether you're watching here at home base of YouTube, Facebook, anywhere else out there that you arrived, we appreciate you being here and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. What's on the agenda for tonight? For those of you who are new, we'll give you that. Obviously, if you're a regular here, you know the drill. This is a show every week about you, the Auburn family, and what you want to talk about. Obviously, I'm in front of the camera talking about things that pop up on my mind, but you get to dictate where we go, your topics and your questions, and of course, your calls. Take advantage of our phone line that is open tonight. You can find that on YouTube specifically, where you can click in and call into the show either on video or not on camera, whichever you'd like to do. And we'll take advantage of that whenever those opportunities come available. They're brought to you by our friends at allthingsauburn.net. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. So to get things started off tonight, do me a couple of favors here. Obviously, as you come in, smash the like button if you enjoy it, the reshare button on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Let people know that you're watching so they can join in on the fun here. And then post right now where you're watching from. Would love to be able to say hello to a bunch of you, connect with a bunch of you, and talk to you about what's on your mind tonight. I see a couple of people already checking in. We got Brian. It looks like Kevin stopped by a little bit early. He says he's ready to see me at the football game. Not this Saturday, but the next. I am as well, sir. I hope the weather will cooperate with us overall. War Eagle from Minnesota, Brian checking in. Thank you, sir, for being here and hanging out with us here on the show from the Great White North. I will set the stage for us. And you guys can choose where we head with this. Obviously, we are 1 week and 3 days, 2 days, however you choose to count that, 3 days from a day. There's not been a lot coming out of fall practice in terms of solid stuff that we can latch on to. Most of that will come as we get closer and as we watch the A-Day game. And then obviously there's been an interesting time right now with Auburn basketball losing players, getting excited about players who are on their way here for next season and who might be coming. Baseball and softball are in full swing. We got plenty of other things just popping all around the spectrum of the Auburn family interest points. So we would love to hit on any of those things that y'all want to tonight. So don't be shy. Join in on the fun whenever you can. Just making sure I've got my little things lined up here. We got our first question in here. If you were going to pick, why is this in the way on my screen? There we go. If you were going to pick an away game to attend this coming season, where and why? Oh, this is, well, I guess my choice would be different now, knowing that the SEC is going to move to a different schedule. So let me just answer the question outright. Yeah, you would think it'd be Cal if money was a constraint and things like that, just to go out there and see something super new. But in a different way of thinking about it, Vanderbilt is where I would go in my journey to go see an Auburn football game in every single SEC stadium. Now, that was made with the knowledge that we would not see in the current SEC scheduling a Vanderbilt and Auburn matchup in Nashville once every 12 years. Now, you'll see Vanderbilt every 6 years in the current schedule, but once every 12 years, because it's swapped back and home and away, you wouldn't. That's how long it would take to go back to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. So in an effort to go see, I think it's Memorial Stadium is what they call it. I may be wrong. It feels like everybody calls theirs Memorial Stadium or Memorial Arena or whatever. I know Wyoming does that. I think Southern Cal does that. Either way, Vanderbilt's home field. So I would choose that normally, and I actually am kind of anticipating trying to make an effort to get up there. But if money wasn't a constraint, Cal would be the obvious choice, as Brian says here. I agree with you there. It's something new. It's something kind of unique. Don't really get to go out that way a whole lot. But, man, plane tickets are expensive, right? Perry agrees with me on Facebook, and it's going to be on his birthday. Well, that sounds like a good birthday present for you to buy yourself or someone to buy for you. Tickets and hotels or whatever you need to go to a game in Nashville to see that. Look, if you go to Cal or Vanderbilt next year, you're probably going to get a win out of it. Let's not just jump out to conclusions here. I don't think Auburn has fallen enough to where it's not in a high likelihood to beat both of those teams. But yeah, they said tickets are going fast. I'm not shocked with the hype of Hugh Freeze being the new head coach and stuff like that. Very accessible. Auburn's got a big contingency of alumni, of just fandom up in North Alabama, really all over the Southeast. But it's not shocking that people would make a strong effort to go up to Nashville. There's a very big Auburn Alumni Association up in Nashville that made a big thing this year about their game at Vanderbilt and the SEC tournament being up there. So I'm not shocked that tickets would be going fast. But here's the reality: is they'll be available in the secondary market. You just don't know what you're going to have to pay to go there. My guess is not a lot, but we'll see. We'll see, right? Thomas is here. Did I say hi to Thomas already? Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining me this week, I guess, technically, for the Auburn Experience podcast. If you have not listened to that, you need to check it out, my friends. Speaking of which, we'll remind you a little bit later in the show. This gives me a good segue into that. I can take that down so you guys can actually see the full thing. But episode 30 will be this Sunday. Maybe in a second we'll talk about something special about that. But you can, at the end of the show today, right here, should take you immediately to that watch page that's already set up. And if you hit the like button already, if you hit the notify me thing, it'll give you the best success rate to make sure you know when we're live there, or to come back and rewatch it. So do that at the end of the show if you can for me, or if you need to go early before then too. But yes, he did a great job. Enjoyed having him here and his perspectives as always. Thomas says Cal and Vandy are the same venue. They ain't us. Is that what you're saying? I don't get what you're saying there, Thomas. They ain't us. But I would, obviously, those would be the two higher choices for me just because of the scheduling right now. Here's the great thing with the SEC switching scheduling. The likelihood is we'll see Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt more frequently. Not like in the old way before Texas A&M and Missouri came here. You used to see like their away stadium every 3 years or something like that. So if it gets back to something like that, I'll feel better. You'd love to see a game in Death Valley. Now, which Death Valley are you talking about? The real Death Valley, like the national park, or are you talking about Tiger Stadium, Death Valley, or Clemson's Field? It feels like it's a very like Memorial Stadium. It's a very overused name. Now, I would assume you'd mean LSU Stadium. If that's what you mean, Brian, let me give you some advice. I have had one of the worst experiences, not just because of the result of the game, but because of the fans and their reputation. Thomas says it best, don't go to Red Stick. Clemson isn't real. And you are talking about LSU. Awful experience there. Absolutely awful. The fans treated us like dirt the entire time. So there's this balance, right? And it's not shocking to me that stories continue to come out of Auburn, especially like with Penn State was a good example of that this year, about how hospitable for the most part, and everybody's got their bad elements. We get that. But you just continue to hear bad stories come out of LSU, out of Florida, out of Alabama, out of Georgia. But out of Auburn, from my perspective, and I know I've got orange and blue glasses on, it seems like they have a pretty good time when they leave, for the most part. There are a few certain groups, I won't name names, that I know misbehave a lot at Auburn, and I have struggled to claim them. But either way, LSU fans the entire time screaming Tiger bait. My wife got punched in the stomach. I'm not kidding. Just because she was an Auburn fan. She is, if you know Jessica, she is the most kind, would never get in anybody's face or say anything about sports anyway. And she got punched in the stomach. On the way to, because we were separated because of the way we had to buy our tickets for the first part of the game, was planning to go over there anyway, had to go early. after I heard about this, was cussed out by had to have been a 5-year-old. And then right behind 5 steps later, as I'm going up to Jessica, a grandmother, easily 80, steps out, won't let me pass, cusses me out as well. Didn't say a word to them, just trying to get up to my girlfriend at the time, Jessica. She's now my wife. That just terrible, 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 terrible place. Absolutely awful. Now, the atmosphere, the stadium's kind of weird, but it's still a great football atmosphere. Just know what you're getting yourself into. And yes, oddly enough, it smells like corn dogs. I didn't believe it until I went there and experienced it myself. Go figure, right? That was quite a bit of a rant. Thomas, smells like trash. If they aren't drunk, you don't fit it in Baton Rouge. That's most college campuses, but there seems to be a little bit of excessive. Now, listen, if you watch this past football season where we did our opponent previews, a lot of the times we had some opposing fans come on and give a preview. And I had my, I say former pastor, not like we don't talk anymore, but because I live in a different part of the world, my former church's pastor I had on. He's an LSU fan, wonderful individual, obviously, as you would expect a pastor to be. Love talking football with him. And he is one of those that you would say is a good representative, and you would hope he would be of an LSU fan. But I struggle to find other good ones besides him and his family. It's a tough situation. Anybody got any different stories about LSU? I'd love to be wrong about that. I'd love to hear different perspectives on it. But for me, LSU is just, I'm glad I did it. If someone gives me a ticket, I'll probably go back. I would have loved to have been down there for like one of Brian Harson's only good times during his tenure, was ending the losing streak in Baton Rouge after the cigar game. I would have loved to have been there for that. That would have been worth it. But really, now that streak's over with, I'm kind of like, I'm just going to sit home and not have to travel down that way. Brian says, I've enjoyed LSU fans at Auburn and LSU games on the Plains much better than UGA fans. And it's really weird, right? So if you ask every Auburn fan who they hate the most, you're going to get Alabama. But there's a strong contingency of Auburn fans that really put, in my mind, too much emphasis on the Georgia rivalry. And I get why it happens, and I understand why it happened. I'm not saying it's invalid, but there's almost that overemphasis on that. And especially with the way they've had success, their egos are a little bit too big right now. So they act up even more. They're just crazy. Yeah, it is what it is. But it gets pretty interesting at Auburn LSU. I think I've told this story before. When I was in college, had to have been my first Auburn LSU matchup there. I painted up full head, face, everything. And we're not all the way dry because we had to get to the stadium, and we're walking that way. And we didn't plan it this way, but we had to walk through where typically the majority of the LSU fans, the opposing fans, line up to get into the stadium, at least at that time. They see us coming. They are hooping and hollering, just carrying on with, throwing beer everywhere. They're all, slammed. And, we start warning them because we're trying to get around them, and they kind of start continuing to form their line around us so we can't get past. I said, all right, look, we're coming through. Wet paint. It's on you now if you touch us. They did not touch it. They did touch us. And, as we walked through there, and some of them got wet paint all over them. One individual, this is a family show. I would say this story in private, but what I had experienced there, how do I say this? What unfortunate thing he decided he was going to do to me, he faced some repercussions for that. Nothing bad, but just enough to make him think twice before doing that again. Let's see. Brian says, I hate Bama. I enjoy Bama fans more than UGA fans. Enjoy is a strong word, but you're up in Minnesota, so I can understand why. And I know you come down, but when you live in the state like I have for the majority of my life, you will say differently. course, I just went here emphasizing how much there's a emphasis for some segment of the Auburn fandom on the Georgia rivalry. Neil's here. Good to see you. Says War Eagle and go UConn. I wouldn't mind UConn winning. It's nice to have them back in the fold of March Madness. I'll be honest with you, though. If you're not rooting for FAU simply because of KT Harrell, former Auburn player, their director of basketball operations, which is essentially the Chad Pruitt for us, what are you doing? But that's fine, Neil. I think it's going to be a fun Final Four, but I am fully an owl, baby. Can't see me when I got the wide shot off, but yeah, owls are what's up. So everybody here wants them to win. Perry, Auburn and Georgia get along better because of the Deep South rivalry than Alabama, because Alabama makes excuses. Well, you know, they have that wall that says excuses. It really says no excuses, but you know how we have fun with that. Thomas, I grew up with an LSU fan, dang near adopted by that family. I'm in good enough to get to roll the jambalaya, but we do not spend time together that week of the year, but we eat good and win and lose. Here, as much as I disparage the LSU fandom, I will say they do it right, tailgating and food and outside of the corn dog smell, all the other stuff there. I am not a fan of New Orleans. I'll just be honest with you. I know Baton Rouge is where they're, but New Orleans isn't that far away. But one thing I will never, ever take away from New Orleans, and by proxy from what else I've experienced, the state of Louisiana, is good food. And that carries over into tailgating. So that they have. I'm not going to argue that. I will concede that point. But if that's what you had to get and sacrificed all the other things, decency as a collective, I don't know that was a good thing. All right, Neil wants to know what's going on with Auburn basketball players leaving and now Flanagan going to Ole Miss. Is that real? Honestly, I've been checked out the last 2 or 3 hours. But is that real? Or is that message board stuff? I have been checked out, so let's find out. Alan Flanagan. Somebody want to confirm that for me while I'm searching? Looking, look. I'm not seeing anything about it. Of course, I may have typed his name in wrong. Anybody got any confirmation on that? We'll come back to that. But I will address this. And Neil, I hope you checked out the videos the last 2 days. I stressed this point in there. Don't freak out. You should have seen this coming. These are two players that didn't see a lot of playing time and likely are looking at the tea leaves falling and saying, hey, Aiden Holloway's coming in. Hey, 2 other amazing guards are coming in a year after that. Hey, Bruce Pearl has said I'm going to hit the transfer portal. Maybe my odds are better elsewhere. And think about it this way, too. Yawan is a guy that didn't want to come to Auburn to start with. He was an LSU guy and only came to Auburn because of the Will Wade situation. Chance is the more surprising one. I'm really shocked by that one. I understand. I can get to a place where I understand all of that. But it's still shocking. But no, the sky is not falling. This is what happens in the transfer portal. We can lament it. Was it Thanos says, if y'all are Marvel fans, dread it, run from it, but destiny still lives. That's the transfer portal in the era of college athletics with transfer portal. Yes, I just quoted Thanos. David says, I hate Bama fans. It could be because I live in Tuscaloosa. Apologies and prayers for you, sir. We have in-laws that live in Tuscaloosa. I should say I have in-laws there, Jessica's direct family. And we don't frequent it too much, but the few times I do roll through old Tuscaloosaville, flag comes up, Auburn shirt comes on. And look, I know we lament about Alabama fans doing that at sporting events. There's a difference to that, right? You can wear whatever you want out in public, even if it is their town. But when you come to a sporting event and your team's not there and you're wearing your gear, what are you doing? What are you doing? Neil clarifying for us. Ole Miss buddy texted me earlier today saying he is. Well, stop the presses. I'm just kidding, Neil. Neil, unfortunately, I'm not, unless I start seeing that from anybody that I know personally that has knowledge of those type of things, or I start seeing it from other media sources, I'm not going to put a lot of weight in that. But he could be right. Obviously, I'm not going to say he doesn't hear. We all have our sources and things like that. But if unless you've got some solid information other than he says, I wouldn't buy much into it. That's just me, though. That's just how I like to go about it. Thomas, the freshmen coming plus the potential transfers will make up for the losses in Pearl we trust. I agree. Not a time for panic. Coach Pearl tried to prepare everybody for this, that the team would look a little bit different. Obviously, when you talk about Zepp leaving, when you talk about the potential of Jalen, of Alan Flanagan leaving, Lior, I would assume would leave. I don't know. And you've got Babatunde and Chandler Leopard who are going to be leaving, but obviously they didn't play hardly ever. The team's going to look different. That's just what happens. People move and do different things. Devin Cambridge did that, and it worked out for him for the most part this year at Arizona State. So no panic. Just wait and see. My LSU on the brain tonight. My Ole Miss buddy is jealous of Auburn and often wishes Ole Miss was as good as Auburn in basketball and football. There you go. So see, look, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you know the context of probably with which you got that information. I have learned increasingly over this last few months and years, the interesting dynamic that's between Auburn and Ole Miss fans. They really, really want to be as relevant as we are. And there's a sect of them that understand that's probably never going to happen, at least sustainably. But there's a certain sect of them that are just lamenting the fact that they can't be as legitimate and as relevant as us across most of sports. Now, they're great. Well, actually, they had a pretty rough go of it in baseball this weekend. Yeah, I was shocked to see that. Don't forget the equestrian team. We talked about them on the Auburn Experience show this week. So yes, but we'll bring it up here. If you haven't heard the news, 5-time SEC champs Greg Williams and his squad, his program is a dynasty. SEC equestrian champions again, 5 times in a row. Absolutely outstanding. Now, we would have loved the last 2 national championship runs to not end in the first round like they did and get shocked. But still, you cannot take away from the dominance that is the SEC competition and Auburn being a dynasty in that factor. Outstanding job by that coach, that coaching staff, those athletes, and the horses too. War horses to that, as Auburn Elvis would say. He does our podcast based on that, so please do check that out if you have not done so. Neil says Ole Miss fans are still angry over Tommy Tuberville to this day. Pine Box, they call him. I mean, wouldn't you? I think, and I don't know if there's any other history such as that, like Tommy Tuberville before him, but think about that. Just think about that for a second. Tommy left Ole Miss for Auburn. That was probably a wake-up call for a school named after the state they're in. They left Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi, for Auburn? That was a wake-up call, and they still haven't settled with it, right? So that's probably why that's there, and every time they lose to Auburn in any facet, whether it be a sport or just something that happens within or outside of the sport, it's a tough pill to swallow for them. Thomas, 50%. TJ leaves after spring due to pecking order or transfers. Are you saying or are you asking? Are you saying or are you asking my opinion? If you're asking my opinion, I think that's probably a fair place to be right now. If you had asked me maybe a week ago, I'd say, oh, looks starting to I'm hearing things that maybe he's going to stick around. I don't know. I'll give Justin Hokanson, credit for this because I know he said it. Others probably said it too, but this is just an extremely, I think he called it a dynamic situation or a fluid, one of the two, but you could describe it either way. It's the same concept. This quarterback situation at Auburn is just, it's interesting. Real interesting right now. If you want to talk about inferiority complex, let me introduce you to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. But why? You control the state. There's a Minnesota state, right? But it's not even Division I. Is there anything else out there? I mean, was it inferiority to Wisconsin? To Wisconsin? I'm shocked that y'all have an inferiority complex. Neil says, I'm hearing Gerner, however you want to say it, is doing well in practice. Also hearing those things too. Again, my stressor to everybody in this is don't read so much. I'm not picking on Neil here, but into what we hear. We heard Robbie was doing great to start off with. Then we heard TJ was doing great to start off with. Now we're hearing that Holden, especially after he got to throw in Pro Day, which some people took to mean that was a sign of things. No, that wasn't a sign of things. What you should take away from this is there is no stability right now at quarterback. And that's a scary thing. Coaches said as much. There's lack of consistency there. It's funny because the last few seasons, since Bo has left and his last year here with TJ coming in, we've done these videos of who's going to be the quarterback at Auburn. And there was a really good reason to do like some video series about this, I did percentage confidence, and I might do something like that at some point. But if you'll notice, I haven't done a pre-spring one just because it's just so speculative right now. There's no meat to really latch onto. So I don't really know. Thomas says he was asking about TJ Finley. I think 50-50 is fair to be at right now with him. If he progresses these last few weeks and shows that he deserves a shot at the starting job, shows out on A-Day, why not stay? How many times have you seen a player transfer thinking they were going to get the starting job? Unless he knows he's going to get the starting job somewhere he goes. Now, if he knows that, go. I want what's best for him. But is it a guarantee? I don't know that. WT, good to see you. Thanks for being here, sir. Again, if you haven't, please smash that like button. Let people know that we are here right now. Brian says, talking about Minnesota having an inferiority complex. That word is hard, man. Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Iowa State. Those are the ones. Really? That's interesting. I never would have thought. Wisconsin makes sense. Iowa too, but Michigan, Ohio State, Minnesota's not even the same league as them. Why would you have an inferiority complex? To me, to have an inferiority complex means that you have to at least be somewhat relevant to that matchup consistently. Like Tennessee for the longest time has an inferiority complex to Alabama, but for the longest time, they were never relevant to it. Some people are going to make that case for Auburn, Alabama. I get it, whatever. But anyway. Houston Nut didn't have. I just saw that one a second ago. Tuberville had chances to win SEC championships, national championships at Auburn, at Ole Miss, I guess is what your point was. He did not. Can't argue with that. Perry thinks that TJ should be a tight end. He did not do good at LSU and at Auburn at quarterback. Let me play the other side, Perry. I don't know how long you've been watching. I think long enough to know me well enough. I like to play the other side of the argument. No quarterback. I don't care if it's Tim Tebow. Well, that's good enough. But Tom Brady. No quarterback will do their best with the offensive line we had for the last few years. Love all of those guys. Their effort, their heart, they were, as individuals, maybe we had some gems in there, and I'm not a good enough assessor of talent to say one way or the other that some of those were good or not. But as a unit, as a collective, terrible. I'm just going off of results, and I don't want to be mean about it, but it just the result of the collective for the last few seasons was terrible. No quarterback was going to be able to have success, high-level success, with the play of the offensive line over the last few years. And it seems, the hope is we're changing that going forward. So, yes, did TJ have a great start at LSU? There were a few games he looked promising. Auburn, there were a few games as well he looked promising. There are a few things that, quite a few things that led a lot of people to believe, probably legitimately, that there was a lot of things to work out with him. But I don't think a position change is what he wants, nor what's best for him at this moment. Unless he just really wants to get in the NFL, then sure. But just because he's tall, I think you're going that route because he's tall and stuff like that. Just because the size is there, the measurables there, doesn't mean that's the right fit for him. If he wants to play quarterback, he's got to make the choice. He's got to make the case, I deserve this starting job, and show that he's gotten better, or he's got to go find a place where he can be it. Someone is really needing that, no matter what the case is. WT says, completely agree that the O-line hurts our quarterbacks for years. Look at Bo Nix. Love him or hate him, I still don't understand the hate for Bo Nix. But Bo Nix is a dang good quarterback. Inconsistent at times. History proves that. But look at what he did at Oregon when he had a veteran and well-prepared offensive line with his athleticism, was in the conversation for a Heisman for the majority of the year. Outstanding games, had his team in the hunt, as he did as a freshman here, for a national title. Bo Nix was a dang good quarterback, and I hate it has ended the way it is. Big fan of his, rooting for him. The question will always be, what if Bo Nix had an offensive line? Timing is everything sometimes. It really is. All right, keep your comments and questions coming. We are about 30 minutes in. No one's called yet tonight. No problem. Sometimes we get like that, and sometimes can't stop taking the calls, but please do take advantage of it tonight if you'd like to. Don't be shy. I don't bite super hard. Do want to point out our friends at allthingsauburn.net, who do bring you Auburn Family Night every single Wednesday night, the phone line, and allow us to do something like this. We appreciate that. So check them out at allthingsauburn.net. Not just a place for you to stay when you're at Auburn, but a place to have a full Auburn experience, which we're all about, because this is where we talk about the whole Auburn experience. Talk to Miss Tanya there, sweetest lady in the world, and she'll not only help you find a great place to stay at Auburn, one of their places, but she'll also make sure you're taken care of to have the best Auburn experience. Allthingsauburn.net. Let's see here. Let me back up. See, we got a few comments and questions. Because the Gophers have 7 national championships, none since 1960. Is that real, Brian? So the fans think that they are in that league, not to make this the Gopher. Yeah, they're taking over tonight. The 2020 Outback Bowl was painful for you. I bet it was. Gosh, I didn't know they had that many national titles. Of course, that's back when everybody claimed one every year, Alabama. So to me, you don't need to have an inferiority complex if that's your history. Now, it sucks that in modern times you're not relevant, but it's more than Auburn has claimed in its history. That's a story for another day. Nix is thriving with a decent O-line. Yeah, I mean, he really is. WT says there is hate for Bo Nix because he left for the most part. Well, his choices were leave as a graduate, which is awesome. You know, so many players and everybody's got to do what's best for them, leave without graduating. You know, I love that. I'm blanking on his name. Recent transfer portal guy for the football team. One of them was going to be a graduate, and he made a big deal about that. And that's a great thing to celebrate. Bo didn't leave. Bo was ran out of town, to be honest with you. He did not. Yes, by true definition of what happened, he chose to leave. I agree with you on that. But Bo was run out of town. Bo loves Auburn too much, and his relationship with that. I don't know him personally, but just my interpretation situation, people that seem to somewhat be in the know about it. Bo made the best decision for him, but probably for the Auburn situation too. in certain ways. You wish Bo would have stayed at Auburn, had the most passing yards at Alabama high school. Yeah, I mean, the talent was there. WT, we talked about this a little bit before you got here, I guess. Yes, Chance leaving hurts a lot. I understand that, but don't panic. In Bruce, we trust. I think Thomas said that, or somebody said that earlier. Perry Cook, my question is 7-footer that Auburn is getting in Georgia for basketball. Is it this year or 2024? 2024. You've got 3 guys coming in for 2024. Now, there's always that chance that someone could see what I did there. Someone could reclassify. That's happened before. I think Austin Wiley reclassified. Did Sharif reclassify? I feel like somebody else did. Either way, I don't know of any of that type of situation happening there. Did you know that Bo Nix's father played for Auburn? Are you asking? Yes, I do know that. But are you making the joke that everybody brought that up on the TV screen? I feel like that's what you're doing, Brian, knowing you as well as I do. But when he left, I just didn't care. I think that's a fine place to be. Yeah, I think honestly, that's probably the best place to be in that situation. Because I think it's fine to be disappointed and a little bit like annoyed that he chose to go somewhere else and then is having success. That can be annoying. But the hate for him, you were also the ones that were hating him while he was here. Anyway, I figured that was sarcasm, Brian. Not panicking after seeing your video. I hate it, but Coach Pearl has a plan to get us where he wants us to. I think most of the time, these decisions do not catch the coaches off guard. So why would it catch us off guard if it doesn't seem like they're panicking? Now, we're not there day to day and all that kind of stuff. I see a lot of lamenting about it that I think is a little bit overly done. And some of this is by people on social media with anonymous. And not when I say anonymous, you cannot trace back to who it is without some real like cybernetic digging, which I don't care to do. But essentially anonymous, wanting reactions, wanting clicks, wanting all that kind of stuff. Everybody's got to have the hot, juicy take. So that's what that type of stuff is what you're seeing. Yes, Neil, we did say that we needed to go to a game, didn't we? Basketball season's over now, but there is next season. It's just so busy during actual basketball season for me. It's hard to justify spending a night out there for a high school game, but we'll see. I believed in Harsin, but I was wrong. Freeze one. I think it was fine to believe in Harsin at the time, and I think that's what all Auburn fans should have done. But at some point, that belief has to be backed up with substance, and as we continue to move on, we see that that really wasn't there. Don't hate the guy. Still follow him on social media just to I like to kind of follow our former coaches and just see what's up outside of like Sonny Galloway. Now, if Brian Harsin never goes around and starts bad-mouthing Auburn, like truly bad-mouthing Auburn in public, then I'll drop that. Like that's you're done with me. That's a Stanley McGlover situation. That's a Sonny Galloway situation. Who else? There's been a few others as well. We beat the Bo Nix horse to death. He left. Life goes on. Well, Neil, see, here's where I'm going to disagree with you, buddy. And no, we don't beat it to death. This is the first time we've brought it up in months, probably since football season. So maybe I shouldn't say that. We're not going to move on because he's part of our history and we're going to talk about that. He's a graduate and I'm very proud of him. Great question though, Neil. And you're talking about Linda Bird. I'm not at liberty to share some of that stuff here live. I've actually asked the question recently, and I'll just know. I would say what I understand about what's going on with her. Just say some prayers for her. I think she's, from what I understand, fine, but just family stuff. So Linda is, for those of you that are wondering what he's asking about, is one of our very first people that's been here on this channel when we started doing it. She's a Booster Club member. I think she's a channel member here too. It's one of the dual people. She Great lady. Met her several times in person. Hope I get to see her again this coming season, football season. Usually one of the regulars at our meetups at Tiger Walk. Just say quick prayers for her. Just family stuff going on right now, from what I understand. We hope to see her again soon, or virtually at least. If Freeze was hired instead of Harsin, would Bo have stayed? You still got that offensive line, Perry. Yeah. I don't know. Let's see here. I think in Coach Freeze, we got the best available coach for our situation. It's a good perspective, I think. I mean, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but I think that's a good perspective to maybe think about and talk about. I really liking what he's doing, and he was who I wanted from the announcement of Harsin's firing. Well, I think everybody, when Harsin was fired, they're, the big names were out there, Deion Sanders, Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin. I mean, everybody's mind went there, right? To one of those three. You had your very vocal Deion camp. And there are things I like about Deion. Watching him at Colorado State, some of the things that he's saying, he's doing, he's a PR monster. Really would have liked some of that stuff at Auburn, but there are certain elements of that as well that I'm kind of like, I'm glad we didn't get into that. I hope he has success, because I'd love to see a relevant Colorado again, right? Better than Lane. Don't forget Cadillac. Now, we're not forgetting Cadillac from that conversation, but the reality is that was always based in more sentiment than reality. Not to say that Cadillac didn't want it. Maybe he didn't make a case to be in that conversation. I think he made a case to be in that conversation. The reality is, though, if you are going to take a job of this level, we just spent part of our show here talking about how Ole Miss is not on the same level as Auburn, and I think most reasonable Ole Miss fans would agree with that. There's a reason that scenario exists. If you come to Auburn, you got to have some experience. Hopefully more than Boise State. And we could play that scenario with a bunch of other coaches, Gus and Arkansas State, but Gus had history with us. Gene, same thing. All that we can go down that rabbit hole all we want. Cadillac had yet to be a head coach anywhere. Had showed he could do that. I would have loved it. You can't see it the new angle, but there's this Cadillac picture, signed Cadillac picture right here. Would have loved, been over the moon, dream finally realized for Cadillac to be our head coach. But what's important is he's here, and he is a dang good coach and recruiter. For how long, I don't know. But that was item number one that Hugh Freeze had to do. Keep Caddy. And he did it. Neil says, Coach Freeze is recruiting O-line, which is night and day different from the last two coaches. I disagree with you on the Gus thing. There's a lot of stuff with time that's been forgotten about things that happened with that. Now, what I will not, and I want to continue to be consistent about this, my biggest knock on Gus was hiring of Herb Hand and his crop of offensive linemen that got us to this point, which is ultimately his fault. So I'm going to concede that point to you, but the whole offensive lineman situation is so convoluted and is not cut and dry. These two guys sucked at offensive line recruiting. It's not that cut and dry. It's so, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. It's just not as simple as some people make it out to be. Agree with that, WT. I'm glad we did not get Lame, because he would be gone soon. In theory, yeah, right? So that was kind of my fears with Deion too. An up-and-comer is always a risk for flight, and Auburn is, let's think about it. Brian Harsin fired. Gus Malzahn fired. Gene Chizik fired. Tommy Tuberville fired. Terry Bowden fired. Pat Dye told, leave, step down, fired Barfield. No, not Barfield. Bill Oliver, interim. I can't remember. Anyway, the history of Auburn is once you come to Auburn, you're done in terms of your next big steps. Auburn's a stopping point. I don't know that Lane Kiffin would have seen that as a stopping point. I definitely don't think Deion Sanders would have seen that as a stopping point. So that's why I'm thankful. Part of the reason I was so adamant we did not need to go down that road. Hugh Freeze is a guy that needs a redemption story and has had that redemption story elsewhere. But a continued redemption story can happen at Auburn and be valued in a way mutually very similar, eerily similar to Bruce Pearl. Different situation, obviously, but still. For all of Coach Chiswick's faults, he was 4-0 bowl games. Man, doesn't that look nice now? I often wonder, Neil, what Gene Chiswick program would have looked like if he had gotten past that year. I really do. And I'm not saying it would have been a quick turnaround again, but I think if he had been allowed to stay for one more year, there weren't other problems with the program, and made another switch at OC and DC, which would have caused a little bit of delay in development too, what would have happened? Yeah, but he's 4-0 in bowl games. One of those, national championship. And I'm glad that we are at the place where Gene is now, for the most part, revered and welcomed back into the fold. Tommy's had that. Pat Dye was never going to not have that. Brian Harsin will never have that, unfortunately, which I think is a tragedy. Gus will have that to some degree at some point in my mind, but yeah. I think Thomas brings up a great point, not kind of harping on that too much tonight, but that's part of this equation too. Gus recruited for different spots, which we changed over into a different system, and they don't fit. It's so much more convoluted, but that is a great point into that conversation. Auburn is a destination. I agree. It's a destination, not a stopping place or a layover place. Yeah, I agree. So we can look back at all of these guys. The great thing about Auburn's head coaching history is there's very few of them in there that we absolutely hate. You shouldn't hate anybody, says the guy who's very doesn't like Alabama fans. I'm just kidding. I mean, there's some truth to that. But yeah, it's going to be hard to ever have a Brian Harsin situation, a Bill Oliver, those type of stories have a good story. Oh, and we had a caller and then they went away. So I think it was, well, I don't know exactly who that was. I think I know who it was, but pop back in if you can hear me. Try it one more time. We've got we tried to get done at 9. We might hang around a little bit longer. Depends on how the conversation's going. Neil says, I think if Russell Wilson had come to Auburn instead of Wisconsin, then Coach Chiswick would have been a lot longer. That's not a bad point, Neil. Yeah. You'd like to think that one player wouldn't make the turnaround. I submit to you then Cam Newton. But I often wonder that. That's a good point. Well said, sir. Pat Dye came in to make Auburn about Auburn, just one sport. Yeah, I think he really bought into that mentality for that time, and I think that was probably a little bit of a refresher from what I understand and know about him. One of my biggest regrets is not getting to meet him in person. Just absolutely hate that. All right, we got our caller on the line, so let's go ahead and say hello to him. You know him, you love him, you've seen him here a lot. Mr. Dusty, what is going on, sir? Let me get you. There you are, new setup, so it took me a while to get it.
What's up, brother?
How you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I just did a pod trying to get some answers on what's going on with Auburn basketball.
What you mean answers? How are you feeling about it? How are you feeling about it?
Just a lot of moving parts, man. It's just a lot of moving parts with all of it. Obviously Bruce is out there trying to, You see him after all these guards. I really want this Denver Jones kid from FIU, 6'4", buck 90, averages 20 points a game on 37% from deep, 47% from the field. He'll be at A-Day for his official visit. So just kind of like I said, man, a lot of moving parts. How is all this going to fit? If you watched Aiden Holloway last night, you see you got a kid that can hoop coming in. So just
You
I don't know
said
where it's
Bronny James who?
Oh, dude. Like literally watching the game on mute, had to like unfollow SportsCenter and ESPN on Twitter today because it's just like I'm not saying the kid's not good, but goodness gracious, there's other prospects out here, fellas.
Yeah. Yeah, they were hyping him up a little bit.
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah,
bit.
I would say you know, I don't think you're in this place, but we've talked about this a lot before you got here, just about the sheer panic that's on some people right now about about the transfer portal situation. What would shock me is if the whole team not the whole team, that would never happen, but half the team decided, I'm out. That's a problem. But two guys that didn't, for whatever reason, one we kind of understand, one maybe we don't, didn't get a lot of playing time. They're seeing the talent that's coming in this year, next year, and Bruce has been very open. We're going to hit the portal.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's so shocking to some people. It's maybe it's because I spend way too much time doing this and thinking about these things, which is just a commentary on how sick of an individual I am. But maybe, I don't know.
Kyle, the only time that I feel like I ever got ratioed on Twitter, and I mean this thing went viral, was when I suggested in the middle of us losing all those games that we are gonna have to hit the portal pretty hard. I mean, I got angry DMs like I never have before. Like it was crazy the response. I was like, you don't think some of these guys are gonna go? Like you don't think Bruce might go tell some of these guys, hey man, like, because I don't know if Bruce necessarily processes people, and I don't have the insight. I don't know exactly how it works, but like some coaches will just process a kid like, hey man, we don't have a spot for you. I don't know if Bruce really does that, but he might pull you in and say, hey, listen, there's a guy coming at your spot that's going to get a lot of play, that's going to get a lot of minutes. We've got to upgrade. And then at that point, it's kind of like a writing on the wall type thing. Like, by the way, you're going to see in the next 2-3 weeks, there's going to be some guys leaving football. Don't freak out. Don't freak out.
It's called the spring, the post-spring transfer portal.
And what's weird about it too, man, is that like we're on year 2 or 3 of the portal. So some of these people need to figure out kids are gonna hit the portal. There's no sense in just losing your mind when somebody goes. And like I wish Chance and Johan all the best, but from a production standpoint, not going to be that hard to upgrade from that.
Well, just from the statistics alone, right? I mean, like they just it's not that we're degrading their efforts to this team. They just weren't given the opportunities, and there's reasons for that. Whether it's because of an injury, whether it's because they hadn't earned it yet, whether it's just there was not enough room to get everybody on the floor. I mean, when you just talk about the production that was or wasn't there, it isn't hard to replace that. Now, we don't know what that could have been, and that my belief and hope is that they're going to have success. Big Devin Cambridge fan, glad he had success at Arizona State. Now, Justin Powell, we can all we're not on the Justin Powell train a little bit. Did he leave and like say some negative things about Auburn? Do I remember that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's when you do that. Like, I'm a big proponent.
Shot at BP,
yeah, when I'm a big proponent of guys, even after they leave. You weren't here, but we were talking about Bo Nix a little bit. I know that's some touchy stuff there.
On Bo Nix, yeah.
But like, I'm gonna support the guys. But if you take Auburn, the university, the athletics department through the mud, oh, it's game on then, man. It's game on. I have one loyalty in this space, obviously. And if you come at the orange and blue, and people that love it and stuff like that, you have just been disassociated from the family. And thankfully, there's not too many of those.
He took some shots, and something to remember about Powell and something that's true about Chance as well. Both those guys transferred 3 times in high school. So are you that surprised when they enter the portal in college? I mean, it's kind of like that. And it's funny, man. Me and you have talked a million times about don't get caught up in stars. Go back to the beginning of the season. The only one of that class left is Trey Donaldson. He's the one that contributed the most, and you have the most excitement out of when you're talking about Yohan Trahor was the second highest rated player, that we've ever recruited,
Yeah.
and obviously I'm just gonna be blunt because I was one of the guys too. Really, a lot of people missed on that evaluation.
And so I think what also want to come back to what you said about Chance transferring a lot. Remember, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. Yawan didn't want to come to Auburn originally; wanted to go to
Right,
LSU, and he came
right.
to Auburn because Will Wade and all
Will
that
Wade.
kind of stuff. So when these guys make choices like that again, it's not surprising. And I'm not even saying selfish. I'm just saying, look, there's a balance that has to be struck between understanding these guys are doing what's best for their livelihoods, their careers, and hopefully along the way when they're making those decisions, those align with Auburn and helping Auburn and stuff like that. It doesn't always end up the case. There's thousands of kids every year that have to make choices like these, and only a handful of them even have the opportunity to be at Auburn. So not everybody's going to be like, gung-ho about. Not everybody is going to be a Zep Jasper who
Yeah, right,
who
right.
rain or shine,
Yeah,
scoring or not, is just an Auburn guy and loves being here. So what else is on your
100%.
mind?
Football recruiting.
Yeah. How about that running
The
back?
dude, I love it. I love the I can't wait to go up there and watch him. And actually, I watched a little bit of him. You put the highlight video on on the shorts.
Mhm.
That's him versus Milton High School. Milton High School is literally across the street. But I had like a family thing, and I had to leave like halfway through the first quarter, so I only got to see like 2 drives of him. And at the time, I knew we were kind of talking to him, but it wasn't. I was actually more trying to watch the quarterback who ended up going to Miami, but we were kind of after him and all that. But so I'm gonna get up to Andalusia and check him out for sure. But I like the fact that big back, like big guy, and the other guys that we're after are all smaller, kind of scat back types. So there clearly is a plan there of a 1-2 punch. And then you've already got a guy like Jeremiah Cobb that you can pair up with a guy like that. So I definitely like the strategy there. And just, dude, you had a Cam Coleman, 5-star wide receiver from Phoenix City, made a pop-up surprise visit today. Jonathan Daniels, who I've seen play multiple times, he's the #1 rated tackle in the country according to on threes rating. He's about 6. I hope so, Thomas. I hope so. And good stuff, Thomas. I watched y'all on the other podcast the other night. Great stuff from Thomas. So I love that. Love to see Thomas getting in here and getting some shine. Um, but so Jonathan Daniels, the 5-star tackle, he's from Pine Forest here in Pensacola. I've watched him play a lot. He was there today, 5-star, like I said, #1 according to On Three. But just you just watch it, like he's one of them guys you look at him and you're like, oh, okay, this is just different. And then who was the other 5? There was another 5-star as well. Now his name slips my mind, but he had 3 5-stars on campus today just for practice,
Mhm.
just for practice. Like
Mhm.
we're doing different stuff, man. You got people like Cole Pinkston putting in predictions for us to flip DeMarcus Riddick, who is a 4 or 5-star, depending on where you look, linebacker that's committed to Georgia. And again, me and you've talked a million times. Really ignore the stars and look at the list.
Yeah.
Like who's after the guy.
Yeah.
And when you see guys like when we're in there with guys now, everybody wants Cam Coleman. Everybody wants Cam Coleman. And right now it kind of seems like we're the leader. Everybody wants Jonathan Daniels, this tackle, man. Right now it's kind of us and FSU. Like we're in these battles for the first time in a long time. We're not going to win
Mhm.
all of them, but it's just, man, it's so good to see. And the thing about it is, dude, you're seeing it before Hugh Freeze has ever won a game. So that
Mhm.
just tells you his recruiting, like that just shows you that he's got the chops when it
Yep.
comes to this. So now he just got to put it on paper, put the product on paper, and when them kids see it, dude, it's all for money. You think a guy gets the top 5 classes consistently at Ole Miss? What's he about to do at Auburn, man? Come on.
Yeah. And so when you put a guy that's got history, right, of being a great recruiter, and to some degree developing that talent too, some facts to back that up in
Yeah.
terms of statistics, I'm sure.
I mean, Tunsil just got #1 paid NFL
Right.
lineman right now.
That's what I was kind of getting at there.
Right.
Just even outside of the college game at the next level, putting guys at the next level. Then you've got Auburn selling Auburn. And then there's this beautiful thing that I've walked through that, some of y'all have not gotten
Yeah.
to walk through the way I've gotten to walk through.
I gotta get it.
That thing, man, that
Yeah.
practice facility, I said, "What is that? A Gatorade machine? Is that a Gatorade dispensing machine right there?" I mean, I think we all stopped. All me and I was with a bunch of the other beat writers. We're like, "What the heck? Is that a Gatorade dispensing machine right over there?" 3D printing facility. I think that was in the public tour, so y'all could at least see the inside of that. But they actually did they didn't make one there, but they showed the process by which they could lower this thing, body scanner around them and form perfectly padding. You got that. They've got the 2 locker rooms and just the chill room in there. I mean,
yeah.
So my point is, as I digress too much, history of a coach having recruiting prowess and developing, Auburn selling itself, and then little perks like that.
Yeah, a little on the victory money.
What more do you need?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to hit on before I get out of here, man. I think it's beautiful, and I'm not attacking the reporter. She's just doing her job. I just love Auburn Twitter. The lady,
I know where you're
yeah,
going. I know where you're going.
All right, so one crazy thing to do with some access, right? Like, kind of, I don't know, but I'm never gonna pretend to play this high level of ball or anything like that. But I did play wide receiver on the high school level. I understand that's not the SEC. Don't kill me. But the point I'm trying to make is, just from freshman ball to JV ball, just from JV ball to varsity ball, and you start off in freshman at most schools anyway with like a base system that you're going to run at varsity, and they add on to it as you go. So just from like my freshman year, we ran 3 formations. But they were our base sets, obviously, when we got to varsity. But like just when you're going from freshman to JV, from JV to varsity, just introducing the new formations, the new concepts. Spring was always really bad, dude. Like, it was just bad because you're learning these new route concepts. Everybody, there's a lot of new stuff coming in. You've got new kids that moved in or transferred in or whatever. Like, people are trying new spots, and not to get too whatever, but like you might be moving from an X to a Z. It's just a lot of stuff going on, bro. So, and a complex D1 Hugh Freeze, Philip Montgomery type system in the 8th or 9th practice. Yeah. Yeah, kids are dropping balls because they're thinking. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And to complete a pass, I think we saw last year just how hard it can be to complete a freaking pass. And the reason for that is because you got to block it. Then your QB's got to, in our case, hold on to the ball, catch the snap. And then from that point, you've got to make the right read, and it's got to get there, and you got to catch it. There are so many things that have to happen just for this to work. Yeah, I'm not surprised that these guys are struggling right now. That's part of it. Take Holden Gerner, for example. The first week and a half, he's taking the 13 reps, he's short arming guys, and this was just on air from just what the media was seeing. He's just not hitting on wide open on air. That's very concerning when you hear it. And that was being echoed by the coaches. And then what have you seen? The last week and a half after that, all of a sudden, he is making a huge jump, and with Robbie apparently got a dinged up shoulder, so right now Holden's the top guy apparently. So at the very least, Hugh called him out in the press conference and said he's the one making the improvements, he's the one shining. So it's like, okay, that's a pretty big flip from a week or two, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah. He comes from Harson's system. He was recruited to run Harson's system, a pro style 7-step drop. Now he has to do the RPO. There's a lot of things going on there, and I'm sure Thomas can speak to this very well. RPO, that's different. All of a sudden I got to read this. I got to read this in. Is he crashing? Is he staying? There's just different stuff going on. It's a new system to learn. Just be patient. It's March. I don't think we're going to throw for 4,000 yards next year, unless maybe somebody at Coastal Carolina can hurry up and graduate for us. But it's going to look better. We're going to complete better than 50% of our passes, and there are going to be struggles in spring. That's going to be part of it, and the passing game will definitely be a part. It's not going to look that great at 8A either, I wouldn't imagine. But don't worry yourself. Hughes won games with guys like Bo Wallace and whatnot. He'll figure this out.
Dr. Bo Wallace, as they used to call him.
Yeah.
So glad that guy's not around anymore. No, I don't know. I don't know him individually, or personally. Just as an athlete, just glad he's not around. But Yeah, good stuff as always, Dusty. Good to hear from you. And
Yes,
like
sir,
someone
buddy.
said earlier, I hope that arm's healing okay.
It's gonna be a long year. I got some bad news this week.
We'll still continue to pray. I hope it gets better.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Later, buddy.
Always good to hear from Dusty. Appreciate his perspectives here. I'll leave the phone line open for. I didn't even put it up tonight, did I? Goodness gracious, Kyle. No wonder nobody called in because you didn't put the little ticker up. But if you do want to call in, I'd say do it fast. And if not, we'll start shutting this down. We're already a few minutes over our normal segment, but we're having good conversations tonight. Let me address these comments and then I'll do my little rundown at the end here before we do rapid fire at the end. Tiger Walk at A-Day, right? Yes, I have not, unless I missed it, seen an official announcement of that, but they usually do an informal Tiger Walk. Now you won't have like the stanchions and humongous crowd, but they did that last year. And if there is, I will be recording it. So watch that live, please. All right. I'll come back to comments and questions, get them in real fast, whatever it is Auburn related that you want to talk about. Reminders, big thing you can do for me, be here Sunday night. Episode 30 is going to happen. There's some big news that happened today. If you know one of our individuals personally, we'll talk about that on the next show. But if you want to, at the end of this show, do me a huge favor. If you want to watch that live or even on the replay, go follow this thing over. It'll take you right over there at the end of this thing, or you can go over to the watch page, which is already made. Go ahead and smash the like button, hit the notify me button, do all those things. It helps build up the excitement for that. I know it doesn't seem like it would, but it really does help us out. But we hope you'll be there for episode 30, the live recording where we talk about sports, culture, and family. Sunday, 9 Eastern time. Going to have a special guest and a special announcement right there on that show. You can be a subscriber. Still got our ongoing subscriber giveaway. We're hoping to reach 4,000, and we'll probably lower our goal and give that away at that time. So tell your friends, tell your family. You can be a channel member, a booster club member. Both those things start at $1 a month. Help keep the lights on here at E2C Network Central. We appreciate those that do one or both, but you don't have to do that. You can just be here, smash the like button, tell a friend, invite them to be part of our little family. Leave a comment on a video. All of those things are appreciated and they're free. And we do appreciate you guys being able to help us out with doing that. Last minute comments and questions. Let's see. Grayson. If you were referring to what, or are you being funny? I'm trying to understand. If you're talking about who Dusty was talking about, different position. I mean, we're basically saying it without saying it. And there's a certain quarterback from a mid-major program, got a lot of hype, was thought to be coming to Auburn. I said this a few weeks back that I was told that was the plan, but I have not heard any smoke since then. So I think Thomas and I talked about this personally, but I haven't heard smoke since then. So I've not really put a lot of stock in that, even though that came from a very, very, very reliable source. The Alabama Twins. What am I missing here? I feel like I'm missing a few things here. WT says, I think our ceiling this year is 8 victories. Our floor is 6. Much too early to guesswork. Oh, you can guess whenever you want. It's the whole point of guessing and speculating and having fun. Just know you'll probably be wrong. Yeah, listen, I think Auburn should always be expected to win 8 games. Will it happen? That's a good question. This year would be one of those years to kind of be ready to be disappointed just because there's so much unknown. But Auburn is capable of that. 8 years, first year, Hugh Freeze would be solid in my 8 years, 8 wins. Decent bowl game would be a solid year 1. Thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are already being here signing off. Please do make sure you head over to that watch page. It'll take you right over there at the end of this. Smash the like button. Hope we see you there at 9 Eastern time. Cool special guest we've got on that. It'll be myself and special guest for the next few weeks. You'll find out why, if you haven't figured it out already, when we tell that on that episode recording. Thank you guys so much. Till I talk to you guys again, we appreciate you being here with us on Wednesday nights and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. Till then, where you go.